For more than 50 years, the question of whether Americans truly landed on the moon in the 1960s has remained unresolved. Some people are convinced the landings were real. Others believe it was the greatest deception of the modern era. The real question is not just whether it happened or not. The real question is this: why is the debate still alive after more than half a century? Why hasn't the issue been settled once and for all? Why is there no single piece of evidence that definitively ends the argument and closes the case forever? Instead of giving you a yes or no answer from the beginning, this video breaks down the conspiracy claims step by step, along with the responses to them, while staying as neutral as possible. The goal is simple: to understand whether humans really set foot on the moon or whether it was one of the greatest strategic illusions of the 20th century. Before diving into the details, there's an important question that often comes up. Does human space travel contradict religious texts? Some people cite verses that they believe deny the possibility of humans leaving Earth. However, when scholars of interpretation examined these texts in context, they explained that the verses refer to the impossibility of escaping divine authority and destiny, not to physical travel or scientific exploration. The meaning focuses on spiritual sovereignty, not technological limits. In other words, there is no clear religious text that forbids humans from leaving Earth to explore space. To understand how this story began, we need to go back to 1957, when the Soviet Union shocked the world by launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. From the very beginning, the space race was never about science or curiosity. It was about power. It was about who could develop intercontinental missiles and dominate the future. At first, the Soviets were clearly ahead. From Laika the dog to Yuri Gagarin, they claimed milestone after milestone. The United States was embarrassed on the global stage. That's when President John F. Kennedy made his bold gamble and declared that America would land a man on the moon. Under this pressure, enormous budgets were poured into the Apollo program and its predecessors, amounts that would equal more than $300 billion today. This leads to a key conspiracy question. Did the United States exploit this moment and set an economic trap for the Soviets? According to this theory, if the moon landing was staged, America achieved two goals at once: winning the media war and pushing the Soviet Union to drain its economy in a desperate attempt to catch up. The space race did play a role in the eventual collapse of the Soviet Union, which makes this theory seem less impossible to some. Given that many scandals and fabrications have been exposed over the decades, it is fair to ask, was the moon landing a true engineering triumph or a strategic deception? To answer that, we need to divide the discussion into three parts. The first part includes claims raised by skeptics that still lack convincing answers. The first major issue involves the original Apollo data tapes. In 2006, NASA admitted that around 700 boxes of original recordings, including the first steps on the moon, were missing. The official explanation was that the tapes were erased and reused to save costs. For many skeptics, this explanation sounds absurd. A project that cost billions somehow couldn't afford new tapes and erased the most important recordings in human history? This raised suspicions that modern technology could have exposed inconsistencies if those tapes still existed. Another strange detail is a rock photographed during Apollo 16 with what appears to be the letter C clearly marked on it, as if it were part of a film set. NASA later claimed it was actually a hair that appeared during the scanning of the film negative, and that the mark disappeared when the original negative was rescanned. Many people found this explanation unconvincing. A third point often mentioned is the first press conference held by the Apollo 11 astronauts. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins appeared tense, avoided eye contact, and hesitated when answering questions, particularly about seeing stars from the moon. Their uncertainty made some viewers suspicious, as if they were afraid of saying the wrong thing. Another major question remains unanswered for many skeptics. Why hasn't NASA returned to the moon since Apollo? If humans could do it with 1960s technology, why is it so difficult today? The usual response is cost and lack of necessity, but many people remain unconvinced. The second part involves questions that skeptics raised and NASA responded to. One major issue was manual docking in space. The lunar module had to rendezvous with the command module orbiting the moon at high speed. Skeptics argue that calculating such precision with 1969 technology seems impossible, especially considering how weak Apollo computers were compared to modern devices. NASA responded that while onboard computers were limited, complex calculations were performed on Earth, and final control was handled by highly trained pilots. Docking had already been tested repeatedly during the Gemini missions. Neil Armstrong himself successfully performed a critical docking during Gemini 8 in 1966, proving his capability long before Apollo. Another claim involves the black sky in Apollo photos. Skeptics argue that stars should be visible since there's no atmosphere on the moon. NASA explained that the photos were taken during lunar daytime, and the intense sunlight required camera settings that prevented stars from appearing, similar to why stars are invisible in daytime photos on Earth. Then there's the famous waving flag. Critics say it proves wind was present. NASA explained that the flag was mounted on an L-shaped pole to keep it extended. When the pole was planted, vibrations traveled through the fabric, and without air resistance to stop them, the motion lasted longer. Once the astronaut let go, the movement stopped, despite the folds remaining visible. Shadow angles are another common argument. Skeptics claim shadows point in different directions, suggesting artificial lighting. Specialists explain this through perspective, the same effect seen when parallel railroad tracks appear to meet at the horizon.